Welcome to Epistemics. This is the very first episode. We have Dawah Digital behind the camera, Suboor, Ahmad joining me on set today. And we're going to be starting this show. We're going to be covering the topic of evolution today. That's your speciality, Ro, as it is, as we all know. You've done many videos on it. But before we do this, I want to quickly explain what this show is about, right? The show simply, those that have watched ODM, GDM in the past, you'll get some of the flavor from that in this show, right? Sure. But specifically, the focus, the audience that we're catering for are those individuals, those atheists, agnostics, those people that don't know, they're on the fence, they're looking for the truth, they're looking for purpose, they're looking for meaning, they're inquiring about God, God's existence, religion, Islam, X, Y, and Z. It's for those people. The majority of atheists, agnostics who are sort of, they're just trying to figure things out, right? That's the audience we're catering for. That being said, the very first show we're going to be covering or going over is on the topic of evolution. Now, it's a hot topic, hot potato topic. You've done many videos on this before, right? You've done several videos, some videos which are very, very academic in nature, very detailed. All of those, I'll link some of those in the description below so people can go and check those out. In this video, I want to touch upon it from a very simple, basic perspective, right? Now, before I get into this, bro, I want you to give us a bit of a background as to why you decided to specialize in this topic.
Okay, so I think that's a very good question, and you can I want to sort of answer the question by asking another one, which is, why isn't string theory associated with atheism?
Because it's not associated with atheism. It's just a theory.
It's just a theory.
It's just a theory, yeah.
No, it's not like, oh, you know, there's like atheists pushing out string theory, atheists blogging about string theory, atheists petitioning schools to try and teach string theory at a younger age. You don't really get that. So it's just a scientific theory, right? Or general relativity or whatever, right? So clearly there is something to do with this theory which is linked to atheism. There's something there.
Okay.
Right? So I'm not saying it does lead to atheism. I'm just saying there is some link, right? There is some association that obviously people are making.
There's a special type of
relationship. Yeah. I think that's a good way.
Would you say it's generally atheism or a certain subgroup of atheists who are more inclined to?
Generally, I would say the new atheism movement, and not even the new atheism movement. That's a bit recent. You could say, you know, the post World War II state atheism, Soviet Union, even pre World War II. Atheism, liberalism, evolution together, evolutionary humanism, all these trends and these currents, they've all been like there. They've been there for the last 150 or so years. So there's something there.
Okay.
So what I wanted to do was basically, firstly, find out for myself, because obviously you want to read more, you want to learn more. The other thing is that evolution itself, I always found it a very powerful concept.
Yeah.
This is even before I was practicing as a Muslim. I just, you know, it's just, well, not practicing as a Muslim, but you get my point, that even before you get into the Dawah scene deeply in terms of academic discussions, it's just a very fascinating topic. So I never saw this as challenging the existence of God. I just never saw the link.
Yeah.
However, I always saw that it was being pushed in a certain way. That, for example, the God delusion. Yeah. Right? Now, that's mega famous. Yeah. You've heard of it. Everyone's heard of it. It's sold millions. It's been translated in multiple languages. In that book, there's a clear link that Richard Dawkins tries to make with Darwinism. Okay. Clear link between atheism and Darwinism. So there is something there, and it's being pushed. So I wanted to see, okay, is it there? Is there anything that one leads to the other? And two, why is there so much controversy about the application of the theory, about the way it's being taught, about this, about that? So, and the other thing obviously is, we as Muslims believe that the purpose of life is to worship God. Yes. There's a higher purpose in life. However, from a purely Darwinian materialistic point of view, the purpose of life, the ultimate rationale of life is to pass on your genes. Yes. Which is, and I'm not just making this up, this is actually what you would find in popular books like The Selfish Gene. You're getting the idea that it's about survival and reproduction and the byproducts of that. And that contradicts everything in terms of the Islamic purpose of life.
Absolutely. I would say in general human principles.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we'll get into that. But before we go there, bro, the first thing I want to really sort of iron out, flush out, is when we talk about evolution, from my little knowledge of what I've seen from your research and what you've been putting out there is not one clear definition of how the term evolution is used and how it sometimes is mixed with other models of evolution. Yes. So why don't you just quickly just define for us what evolution means and what Darwinism or the Darwinian mechanism is, and what is a mechanism in the field of evolution.
So before sciences. I do that, one of the first things that of you may be thinking is, why are we getting into semantics? Why are we getting into
why are we?
Right. So let's just do it this way, right? So we got Mohsin, he's doing the filming here, and we're here, right? So you keel over and you're like, oh, my heart's hurting, my left arm's hurting, and
God forbid,
yeah.
So maybe we should have used Mohsin as the example.
So anyway, so say you're just keeling over, right? And I'm like, is there a doctor in the house? And Mohsin runs up to me and says, I'm a doctor.
Yeah.
I'm like, bro, help him. And he's like, I've got a DPhil in philosophy, right? I'll be like, that's not a doctor.
Yeah.
Like, clearly, having a PhD in, philosophy is different to being a medical doctor. This is like two different things. So semantics is not just merely a word game, right?
Yeah.
We want to be clear what we're speaking about. So, for example, when it comes to evolution, Darwinism, it's very important to be particular about what we're speaking about. Okay, so the first point that we need to do is that we need to realize evolution as a general idea was known, written about, philosophized about for at least 3,000 years.
Okay, fair enough.
Approximately that figure, right? At least that time. We have documents going back to the ancient Hindus, the ancient Greeks, the ancient Chinese. People are speaking about biological change over time.
Okay.
Now, Darwin came along, actually just before Darwin came along, the first, you can say, formal theory of evolution was put forward by Lamarck, Jean-Baptiste Lamarck, a French biologist. Now, he basically said, well, you have biological change over time. Everybody knows that. Everybody agrees with that. No one's going to disagree with that. So he wanted to work out two things. The two things he wanted to work out is, what is the history of evolution? What happened in the past? Two, why did it take place?
Okay.
So he had an idea, which is that the history is that there's many, 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 many different origins of life.
Yeah.
And then these forms of life are evolving and changing. And these parallel lines of evolution which are taking place, this is happening because he believed that one of the driving force was the inheritance of acquired characteristics.
Okay.
So before we get into the technical terms, just the only thing you need to keep in mind is that he had a history, which is multiple origins, and he had a mechanism, which is inheritance of acquired characteristics. So there's a mechanism. Okay. Now, Darwin, 50 years after him, came along and challenged him.
Right.
And said, there's not multiple origins.
Yeah.
There's not a bush of life. There is a tree of life with one origin.
So what was his reasons for making that claim? Was there reasons behind it, or was it?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Was it just a theory he was?
That's a good question. I mean, one of the ways of thinking about it is that why would you say if you were to look at the complexity of life and even the first life or whatever it is, it is such an improbable event from a logical perspective, from a naturalistic perspective, that you get this origin. Now, if you're somebody who believes in God, like Jean-Baptiste Lamarck, right, then God says, be and it is. You have origins of life happening all the time. It's different. But if you're a naturalist, you just want to explain things purely naturalistically. It doesn't make sense to posit lots of origins of life.
Because you have to explain more.
You have to explain more things. You just say, okay, just one. Let's just stick to one. Now, the thing is that Darwin, and what's so powerful is that he also gave a mechanism.
Right.
And that mechanism was natural selection.
Sure.
Right? Natural selection was the mechanism. So far what we've covered is this. Evolution goes back a long time. Lamarckian evolution is different to evolution.
Yes.
Because Lamarckian evolution has two parts, a history and a mechanism. Darwinian evolution is different because there's a history and a mechanism.
Right, sure.
Now, the tree of life, which is the single origin, and natural selection, they obviously do not have the same epistemic weight as evolution. Because evolution is simply observable. We can see evolution happening for us. And we knew it before. So evolution is simply true.
Okay.
It's just simply true. Right? We can see it.
You think it's observation. It's based on observation.
Okay. Yes. You don't even need to say it's science, because evolution, the observation of evolution existed even before the scientific method. We can see evolution happening. Right. Now, if somebody was to confuse the two terms, evolution and Darwinian evolution, one is certain, one is a scientific theory, which is valid, but there's assumptions, it's based on probabilistic framework and disputes about it, clearly. Do they both have the same epistemic weight? Do they both?
Well, obviously not, based on what you're saying.
Yeah. So what is the implication if they are switched around? If the terms are used interchangeably?
Well, you're justifying a theory now on the grounds of a known established fact.
Yes. So it's the doctor fallacy, what we said before.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So
now do you see why some militant atheists are absolutely put off from distinguishing the two? For example, Aaron Roth. He does not want to distinguish the two.
Yeah.
I mean, even recently when I spoke to him, he was just like, he's just like...
We're going to save that for the next episode, that your specific debate and touching upon specific points on that. But so far what you've said is very, very interesting. And I'm sure it's news to many people watching this now. And thank you for simplifying it to the point where people like me can understand what you're saying. So what you're essentially saying, bro, is you have evolution, which is a fact which has been known for thousands of years. Then you have models or theories, which are theories, they're not facts. But what's happening, there's a conflation which is taking place. We can discuss in a second whether you think it's deliberate or accidental, or why it's happening. But what's happening is that a particular theory, which is known as the Darwinian mechanism, is being, or people are trying to establish it as a fact, piggybacking off evolution and mixing the two things. Is that what's going on?
So this is why the word fact is again something which is very slippery.
Yeah.
In the common day language, we say fact like there's a chair, that's a fact. That's Mohsin is wearing a hat, that's a fact. There's a light, there's a fact.
Yes.
These are facts. However, in science, when the word fact is used, it doesn't mean fact in the same sense as there's a chair over there.
Yeah.
It means this is the best naturalistic account we have. This has been corroborated by evidence, or this is something which is the prevailing theory. It is, say, the only view that exists on a particular phenomena that's trying to be explained, whatever. So scientifically, the word fact would be used for theories, and scientists will use them interchangeably. Fair enough.
As long as it's understood and acknowledged as to what they mean by that term in that discipline.
So that's why sometimes it's even better to use the word true rather than using the word fact, right? Yeah. So, in the scientific literature, you will get things like, this is a fact, right? And because people are used to the common word fact, which means just literally true, absolutely true, they'll think, oh, that means absolutely true. Again, it's confusion, Sure. So, and what I want to try and do, and what my aim is to do, is to try and show the difference between the public perception, what the layman, what the pedestrians like us believe about, general phenomena in science, and what the academics say.
Sure.
And as always, there is a huge gap between the academic understanding and the public understanding on many topics. However, when it comes to this particular topic, it's not just a normal gap. It's like a Grand Canyon.
So before we get to the experts, before we round up on that, I just want to share a quick clip with you. I want to get your initial reactions to the clip.
Sure.
Is going on. I'm only going to play a small section for you.
I once got into trouble, and indeed I was sued for $51 million for saying that people who don't believe in evolution are either ignorant, stupid, or insane. Now, that was taken as an insult, but actually, of course, it's a simple statement of fact.
All right, so you've just seen the clip. Now, a few minutes ago, 10, 15 minutes ago, if you hadn't covered and shared what you've shared with us now, just the little that we've covered, we would have watched that clip and thought no different in regards to what he means by evolution, right? We would have thought he's just referring to evolution, and he's calling it a fact, right? But from what you've said, we understand that when he's speaking about evolution, he's referring to the Darwinian mechanism, Darwinian evolution, and he's calling it a fact, and he's almost, in a very authoritative way, dismissing people who would say otherwise. Right? So what do you take?
So the first thing is, look, bro, we accept authorities. We are like lemmings. Yeah. So somebody says stop, we stop. We're just as human beings. Even if you look at a high school, right? In a high school, all the teenagers are like, oh yeah, I'm trying to look different, trying to do this, trying to do that. The fact of the matter is, they're all sheep, right? Yeah. People are always trying to fit into a particular group, a particular tribe, a particular, manhaj, right? Manhaj, but a school, right? Yeah. A particular thing. So what's happening here is that you've got somebody who is clearly a person of authority.
Yes.
He is the most well-known academic professor in the world, right? The most well-known science writer in the world. In fact, credit to him, I believe he's a fantastic science writer. We have to give him that. However, he's emotionally driven to push atheism.
Yes.
Because he's emotionally driven to push atheism, he says things and does things which people would think are scientific when they are not.
Right.
And the problem is that we would take the statements of a scientist to be scientific statements.
Yes.
When those could be statements about metaphysics, epistemology, or just his own theoretical ideas, right? And that's what's happening here. Now, the ancients believed in evolution. They believed, they may not have called it evolution, they may have called it transmutation or whatever.
Yeah.
They had this idea that you have changes biologically over time.
Sure.
Now, what's happening here is that he is basically pushing out the narrative, you've got to be a complete fool if you reject it. However, that's unfair for him to do that without distinguishing what he's actually speaking about. Because clearly, if he's trying to say, if you don't believe in Darwinism with the history and the mechanism to be true literally, you're an ignorant, stupid or insane or whatever, right? Clearly, if he tried to say that, it wouldn't have much weight academically. It'd sound dumb. But when he says something like this, because there's that confusion, it sounds really intelligent. And he can try and defend himself. He can, privately say, well, I said this, but I actually meant this. Yeah. So we need to be very clear of what we're actually speaking about.
Right.
And people like him, they promote atheism using evolution. Sure. And that's another link that they try and make, which is false. Yeah. And they need to be called out on these things.
Okay. So just to round off and summarize, we'll do other shows going into details with certain specific other topics to do with this subject. So far, what we've seen, just to summarize from a lay perspective, number one, there's normally a conflation between evolution as a fact and the mechanisms of evolution, such as the Darwinian mechanism.
And the history.
Right? Some new atheists, popular writers such as Richard Dawkins are doing is they're conflating the two and then presenting the Darwinian mechanism as a fact, basically. Or they're trying to establish that
it's all a fact.
Yeah, it's all a fact.
It's all true.
And that's how it's been taught in our educational systems. Yeah. That's what the information that's out on popular level, So that being said, most people watching this will probably have that belief too, right? Whether you're Muslim, you're an atheist, you're an agnostic, whoever you are, right? If we go by what you're saying, what I'm getting from you is that the Darwinian mechanism itself, let's focus in on that for a second, is not an established fact. Even in the is that correct in saying even in the discipline of science itself? Okay,
so the Darwinian mechanism is not literally true, if that's what you mean by fact. Yeah. It is not something which is, like, for example, we know with absolute certainty that this is what happened. Yeah. Right? Now, what I'd like to end upon is it's irrelevant whether you actually believe it to be literally true or you don't. Yeah. In regards to the belief in God. Yeah. Okay, this is very important to understand. So even if Darwinian evolution was what Richard Dawkins wants us to believe, a true representation of the way the world actually works, even then it goes not an inch towards the idea that there is no God or undermining the existence of God. Because you have to understand, look, at the end of the day, sometimes you have to go for the jugular. Yeah. Why are we even talking about this? Why are we not talking about relativity or string theory? We are talking about this theory because it's been used by the likes of Richard Dawkins to try and promote an atheistic agenda.
Right.
And one of the ways we tackle it is by showing that, look, it's not literally true. But even if we didn't do that, we need to realize that whether you're actually confused by the majority propaganda about that this is true, or you're now enlightened that actually it is different to the way it's been taught, either way, it doesn't go an inch towards the belief that there is no God.
Okay, it's brilliant. So we're not going to have time to cover it now, but you said that amongst the experts, there are different views, different models. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, this is not controversial.
Right.
Natural selection has been challenged in the sense that I can't address some of the difficult questions in terms of biological novelty and stuff like this. This is like a given. Yeah. It's not even like, oh, you have to go really deep into the literature and find something. No, I mean, look, non-Darwinian evolution is even a term. It's even an academic term, non-Darwinian evolution, right? Yeah. So, we don't need to even get that deep into it before we realize that that's the case. Yeah. But from a public perception point of view, you would think, no, the tree of life, natural selection, these things are like, you've got to be an idiot. Yeah. All the scientists are in agreement. And obviously that's not the case.
Right. Fair enough. Okay. Brilliant. Thank you for covering that with us. We're going to have you on for other episodes addressing more specific areas within this topic. And until next time, take care. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys are watching for the first time, make sure to subscribe and click the notification bell and stay tuned for the next episode.